Welcome to Fintech Daydreaming, the podcast that dives into the world of banking technologies and the ever-changing landscape of fintech companies. We bring you real-life examples from global and local thought leaders, as well as experts working within the financial industry, and seek out the best stories from the front lines of financial services innovation, where dreams of industry pioneers meet reality. Hosted by Pål Krogdahl and Ville Sontu. This is Fintech Daydreaming.
Welcome back to Fintech Daydreaming. It is an end of an era. Well, actually not quite. It's the end of a season anyway. We have had a fantastic first season of this year. This is the last episode where Ville and I will just take a little quick review of what we've done, who we've spoken to, and what we have thought has been some of the major trends before we disappear off for a rewarding, deserved summer break, like we expect all of you are as well. Here in the Nordics, we tend to have quite nice long summer breaks, 2, 3, some people 4, 5 weeks, depending upon what you're doing. Ville and I will be taking a break, going off, celebrating, enjoying ourselves, recharging batteries and getting ready to look at the explosive world of fintech coming back after the summer, heading towards Christmas. Although now that it's summer, I really don't want to be talking about snow and cold and Christmas and everything else. But as always, I am Pål Krogdahl. I'm going to be your host for this episode, but I never do this without Ville. So Ville, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, getting ready for the summer. This is when we're recording this today. This is my last day of work for this before my summer break. So I'm feeling a little bit stressed with all the stuff that I have to finish before I head for my vacation. But other than that, feeling good.
Sounds fantastic. Sounds good. How many weeks vacation are you taking?
Oh, this time, I'm only taking 2 weeks for now, and then I might take a couple of weeks later. Typically, we're in the Nordics, we have anything between 4 to 5 weeks on average, summer vacation. Some have more, some have less, but on average, like 4 or 5 weeks. And this time around, I'm breaking it into 2 parts. So I'm taking 2 weeks now, and then I'm gonna wait and see what happens with the second part of my summer vacation. I have no plans for the other part yet, but I like it this way.
Sounds good. I'm actually not going on vacation from my normal day job until beginning of July, but I have got a week's trip potentially scheduled in 2 weeks' time, but that's for work, traveling to the opposite side of the world. It's going to be a long flight. I double checked. It's going to be 22 hours of traveling for what equates to 1 day worth of workshop and then another 22 hours of traveling. So part of me is looking forward to it because I'm going to a part of the world I've never been to before. Another part of me is thinking I really do not want to sit on an aeroplane for 22 hours. But sometimes we do these things, right? Even if it is for work.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, it's been a lot of travel for me as well. I feel like I've been traveling like almost every week for the past month or so, but this week I've been able to start to calm down for the vacation. So I think this is a good way to end for the podcast as well before the summer.
Yes. And normally, or should I say traditionally, we tend to get together and sit in person when we do these episode summaries, very often with a beer, like we did with Brett King actually earlier this season. We sat down with Brett, had a beer.
And with the Nordic Fintech Summit, but yeah.
Oh, that's true, there as well. But that was slightly different because that was a live episode and we were at an event rather than sitting in our houses or homes having a relaxed time. So unfortunately, it is morning. We are rushing a little bit, as Ville said, last day of his working before going off on vacation. So we decided to very quickly just turn on the cameras, turn on the recording and record this before Ville shoots off to wherever it is he is going. But with that in mind, we have had a fantastically good season. I don't know if we want to sit here and go through every single episode we've done. Maybe we should. I don't know. But Ville, what has been your highlight episode, your favorite guest?
Well, first of all, I think this is the first season ever where we did 2 live episodes. So we did the one from Stockholm, and then we did the one, of course, as usual, from the Nordic Fintech Summit. So I really enjoyed both of those. I think like we mentioned in both of those episodes, it's always so much fun to meet people in person in these kind of circumstances where they are in kind of conference mode, and then on the other hand, to get to meet people who are listeners or have listened to the podcast before. So getting direct feedback and being able to have a chat with the listeners, even from surprising places when you meet them in these kind of live conferences. And those were the kind of a bit of a difference in pace, perhaps, for a regular season, which I enjoyed a lot. Other highlights, we did the live recording with Brett King, which was, of course, very special. We had the privilege of getting onto Breaking Bank's global feed as well as a kind of crossover episode. So that was special. I mean, Brett's not in our region, our part of the world, not too often, and getting a chance to sit down with him for like 45 minutes for in-depth discussion was a lot of fun. My only kind of regret from the Brett King episode is that I listened to his podcast, The Futurist, just now, and it seems like none of our good ideas have stuck in his head. He's still on a very wrong path when it comes to things like crypto and stablecoins. But anyway, it's difficult to turn the head of a thought leader, maybe.
We're all entitled to our own opinions. You and me, Ville, we are quite harsh when it comes to the world of crypto and those things. So other people's are a little bit more, can I say, positive? But until the world shows us that there is something tangible behind cryptocurrencies, I, for one, I am not taking them too seriously. But I've seen stranger things, and there's so much going on at the moment that I'm almost concerned about the future we have got.
Yeah, indeed. On the season still, I think one of the things that I realized during the course of the season was that I've started to enjoy more and more our Nordic FinTech Highlights episodes. I think when we do it together with Janne, I think we've kind of reached a place where we're able to have really fun conversations now, and I think we've seen some rise in the listener numbers as well for those episodes. So I think people are starting to kind of get used to, or almost like expect that we do those episodes. It gives a nice change of pace, so that we don't always have a kind of a third-party guest in a way, and we're able to focus on the Nordic parts of the Nordics in terms of fintech at least. Out of those episodes, my favorite one was the Coachella episode. Also got some direct good feedback from the Coachella episode. We talked about Revolut. We talked about buy now, pay later for the music festival. So it was a fun discussion, and I was happy to hear from the listeners that it was also received quite well. So it's always fun to hear.
No, I agree with you. I think the episodes we're doing with Janne are very well received, very topical. They focus very much on the Nordic fintech market, so they're very much focused on our listener base here in the Nordics rather than globally, unless there are people globally who are interested in understanding what's happening in the Nordics. So I agree with you completely. Outside of that, when it comes to guests, and to a certain degree, my favorite episode, I think we've had some fantastic guests. Like you said, it was great to have Brett join us in person, sitting, relaxing with a beer. We also had a fantastic discussion with Sampsa from Alisa Bank. But I think for me personally, my favorite episode was actually the one that we did with Leda. I think she's fantastic. She's so bubbly and passionate. She's written 2 fantastically good books. And I think that was a great episode, the same as the one we did before with Leda. She brings so much energy and happiness to our discussions. The time goes way too fast. So I thought that was to me, that was the highlight of this season, was having another chat with Leda.
Yeah, I mean, it is always like, who's your favorite child, basically, because all of these episodes are special in their own way. And I agree. Always fun to chat with Leda, and we had a good discussion about the new book as well. I think it was very well received as well. Another great episode which deserves a mention is because I think it's also one of the highest numbers of listeners was the episode with Sampsa from Alisa Bank. So we've long been teasing about Alisa Bank. We seem to be talking about them many times over the course of the past few seasons. And finally getting the CEO to be a guest, of course, was a privilege. And you can see that from the listener numbers. Again, like I said, it was well received, and especially because Alisa Bank and Sampsa shared on their channels the episode quite a bit as well. It was well received by the audience. So and again, very insightful discussions. I've heard people from working inside the banks that they always wanted to know more about Alisa Bank, and Sampsa was very candid about a lot of things about the journey. So I enjoyed it a lot.
Absolutely, and particularly with a focus again back on the Nordics and Finland. Alisa Bank is breaking the mold. They've been around for a while, but they're very much behaving like a neobank, digital challenger bank. They are pushing the boundary and envelope on embedded finance, which, I'm passionately focused on, and so are you. And also at the same time, though, they're an interesting bank. I am a customer of Alisa Bank as well, predominantly because I wanted to find out what all the hype was about. So I went through their process, did the customer onboarding and everything else, nice and quick and easy. There is some issues in their platform, but all in all, I think they're doing a fantastically good thing. And it'll be interesting to see as other neobanks like Revolut continue to try and get a larger footstep in the Nordics and in Finland, how banks like Alisa is going to respond. In actual fact, I had a very interesting experience earlier this week. As you know, Ville, I've been having some discussions with one of my banks, or the bank where I have my mortgage. And I was talking to someone there the other day because they wanted to evaluate my portfolio. And I actually mentioned Revolut and that I was a customer of Revolut. And this banking person shocked me because they didn't actually know who Revolut was. And that concerns me a little bit when you're talking about advisors in a bank. They should really understand and know the landscape. Yeah, they said, I think I need to Google this Revolut. I've heard about it, but I don't know who they are.
Oh my God.
Oh gosh. And you want to be an advisor for me. Yeah, oops. Well, but there we go.
We truly and honestly live in a fintech bubble, I think, Paul, because again, to us, it's such. I mean, it's almost like saying, "What is Google?" if you don't know what Revolut is. So, but yeah, sometimes you gotta remember that most people on the street, they have no idea what Revolut is. So we are in our own bubble, but still fascinating. If you're working as an advisor in a bank, you perhaps should know this stuff. You should be in the bubble, but who am I to say?
But it sort of highlights a dilemma that I've been seeing over the last 12 to 24 months, if not even longer, particularly when I'm talking to the incumbent banks. And I know that you're working at an incumbent bank, but not necessarily in the same domain. But I very often ask the people in the banks, are you scared of Revolut? And they say no. No, this is not a fear for us at all. We're stable. We've got our foothold, and everything's okay, and no one's going to displace us. And back to talking to an advisor that doesn't even know who Revolut is, I'm wondering whether there's a fundamental lack of visibility, understanding, and view on what is actually happening in the sort of global market and the trends that are coming going forwards.
We talked about Revolut a lot. If you basically pick a few themes from this season, you probably will notice from the analytics that Revolut is very high on the list of things we talk about often, and for a good reason. Especially here in the Nordics, we now know that they're making a push to enter the Nordic market very soon. And as you say, in the incumbent banks, most of the sentiment around Revolut seems to be that, well, it's just another one of these online neobanks. We've had those around for a while and they're not actually doing anything. What people maybe fail to see with Revolut is that it's like, if you see like a calm sea or a calm lake with no waves, then underneath the surface, there is a massive rock, but you don't see it. It's just underneath the surface. And that rock is the global platform that Revolut has built. Everything that they have in there, all that interoperability, the cross-border payments, everything. Then once the water surface goes down a little bit, suddenly you are exposed to a massive disruption in your landscape, because that global scale, those kind of globally scalable use cases that are able to roll out very quickly as soon as they kind of get the local configuration in place, is massively disrupting. For example, in the context of Finland, I mean, all they really need is they need to hook up the authentication mechanism that they have on Revolut into the bank authentication, formal bank authentication setup in Finland. So that makes them, then you're able to log into government services and all of these other services that you need bank IDs in Finland for. Once you have that, then you have kind of the retail space covered. Then they need to hook up into the e-invoicing infrastructure that we have, and probably even do that in a better way with recurring payments than with the existing e-invoicing. And then third, you start to offer mortgages for the retail space. And then boom, you have the entire Revolut stack sitting on your lap as an incumbent bank here. And that is massively disrupting, especially considering that their onboarding flows are very seamless and fast. Barring any kind of compliance and risk issues, of course, we'll see how that plays out, but at least you will have a serious competition very quickly in that situation.
Absolutely. And I think that they will be able to deliver on things like request to pay a lot quicker and simpler than the traditional banks are struggling with. And on top of that, like you said, I think that the Finnish market is ripe for disruption when it comes to mortgage products. There is basically only one mortgage product here in Finland. And I think it needs someone like Revolut to come here and reimagine what mortgage really means. And it's going to create an absolute pandemonium for most of the incumbent banks, because the ability to react to that with the legacy systems is going to be very, very painful.
Yeah, exactly. And simple things. For example, Revolut is already promoting for you to put your salary directly into Revolut with the fact that you're able to put it directly into money market funds and gain interest. I mean, whatever is the market interest, I think it's around 2.5% at the moment on the daily balance. So even those small things, and then it's completely flexible. So you're able to withdraw money from that flexible account when you need it. But for the time that you're not using it, you're able to have it in this interest-bearing account. Small things like that are stuff that the Finnish banks, for instance, don't offer in any shape or form today. So again, that's huge. On the Revolut news, by the way, don't want to kind of go too much into a single topic, but I noticed that...
by the way, we are not sponsored by Revolut. This is in no way sponsorship or endorsement of Revolut. Please make up your own decisions and choices. Have a look at Revolut and all the other banks. Do not take our recommendation at face value here. We're just discussing what Revolut is doing versus the other banks, particularly here in the Nordics. Also, Coachella is a good festival, but other music festivals are available, like we mentioned earlier. But yeah, remember this is the final Revolut bit. So they just announced an interoperability setup with EPI, or the Vero P2P payment scheme that the Europeans are building. And that means that from Vero wallets, you're able to send money to Revolut with a phone number or other aliases that they have defined between the interoperability scheme, and vice versa. So, I mean, this kind of interoperability on a global scale is huge for Vero, but also for Revolut, because now they have access to all of the P2P schemes that are part of the Vero network. I think this kind of theme is going to continue for the upcoming years. So we're going to see a lot of interoperability things for the mobile payment schemes that are built in Europe. And I think this was a very
interesting big launch now in the past week or so that happened between Revolut and Vero. So yeah, things are moving fast in the European and Nordic scheme, and it's going to be a fun year ahead as well.
It is indeed, and I'm wondering here whether I'm going to end up eating my own hat in the future. One of the things that I have categorically stated is I do believe that the future of banking will be dominated by platforms, but in the Nordics particularly, and potentially across the whole of Europe, we're not going to really see super apps as you do in Asia Pacific. And that's predominantly because of the nature of how we as consumers use our digital devices and are digitally native. I'm wondering if Revolut potentially isn't going to start to shift that pendulum a little bit. And if they do, obviously I'm going to end up having to eat my hat here, because we might see the rise of a super app or something looking a little bit like a super app. It's potential. I still have a strong view that we're not going to see that. But what do you think, Ville?
I have my doubts. I mean, I have no doubt that Revolut and others, of course, that are in the same field are able to create a great portfolio of services within their app and able to offer, basically bundle a lot of non-banking stuff through their subscription. We already see that with Revolut's higher tier subscription tiers. So they bring a lot of different services and that you can then access through the Revolut app. But then again, you can also access those things with the Revolut subscription by going directly into those services as well. So even though they are kind of an aggregation point, I don't see them in the same way as a super app where it's kind of the beginning and the end of all your transactions. At the moment, at least, again, we might end up being wrong, but on a service aggregation level, I totally believe that. But from a user interface, if you consider the super app to be like your super interface to everything, I'm still on board with you that it's not going to happen in Europe, at least not to the same scale that we've seen in Asia.
You bring up an interesting point there, because if you think about it, even looking at Revolut and what Revolut is doing today, when you go into their app, it is very much output-based, product-based. Whereas the real super apps in Asia Pacific are outcome based. They're part of the customer journey. They're part of your life journey. Whereas Revolut is not. You still go to Revolut for point solutions or point products that you might consume or buy or whatever else. I think there has to be a shift into living through a consumer's full life story and life capability to be able to give those outcomes rather than outputs. So I think there's still going to be a good marketplace for capabilities, but not a super app that enriches your life.
Completely agreed. And this bridges nicely into the overall discussion about embedded finance. So what is really the role of the bank moving forward, where the customer flows are? It's I think I made this analogy when I was on stage at the Nordic Fintech Summit as well, when we talked about embedded finance, is that in the future, the banks should be considering themselves more as brands with great products or great solutions for your customers, rather than a place where people will go to. So instead of being like, let's say, like an IKEA, where it's the only place you can get the IKEA furniture is at IKEA stores, the banks perhaps should start to think about themselves like Coca-Cola, where you don't have as many brand stores or flagship stores where it's the place you can buy Coca-Cola, but you make sure that your products are on the shelves in every place. People associate you with your brand and the quality and the experience and the service or product that they get when they buy your product, wherever they are. And then that linking remains. And then you're able to build loyalty through that. So thinking about these distribution models in different way than just building the fanciest and shiniest store for everybody to come to is something that the bank should consider from a strategy perspective. At least that's the way I see it.
I agree with you completely. And I think we've had this discussion repeatedly. The growth of embedded finance is accelerating, and the banks need to make a decision as to how they're going to play in this space in the future. They don't necessarily have to be the ones that own the customer journey or become the platform or whatever, but they need to at least have a strategic point of view and direction of what they're going to do as this continues to grow. But also with that, I suppose what we should do, Ville, is promote the fact that the latest Moby Forum paper on embedded finance is about to be published. You and I are the co-chairs of the expert group for the payments expert group in Moby Forum, and we have completed the latest paper on embedded finance, which will very soon be published.
Indeed. In fact, it might be out by the time this episode goes out. So looking forward to seeing the reaction from the Moby Forum members, and of course everybody who wants to have a look at that paper. It is available from Moby Forum website. Anybody can get it. It's not secret by any means. Quite the opposite. The more people read it, the better. And again, it was a really fun experience to write it together with you, Paul, of course, with the support of the entire group. So we had a lot of input into the paper. So not claiming that it was just you and me, but again, we have our names on it, so we have to take responsibility of what's in it.
Yes, absolutely, we should. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a good read. In fact, I know it's a good read. We wrote it, so download it once it's available and have a read of it. But back to our podcast episodes, Ville. We've spoken an awful lot about the episode with Leda. We've spoken a lot about the episode with Sampsa and also with Brett. But what we haven't spoken about is our episode with Chris from Receipt Hero. The fintech that are working to digitize receipts across the board. I thought that was another interesting episode. Myself, I thought it was so interesting. I actually went and downloaded the app directly afterwards and have been playing with it. It hasn't been adopted that wildly across Finland yet, but there are certain times when my phone will pop up a notification saying you've got a new receipt, and I go in and have a look. So, a good, interesting fintech, and I hope they're going to do well going forwards.
Yeah, I think they already have done quite well. I mean, despite the fact that they're not available anywhere, but they are one of the pioneers in this space in the Nordics, and they've been at this for quite a while. And again, I was really happy to have a discussion with Chris. We've seen them around in the Nordic fintech space for a long time, and people have their questions and doubts about their business model, and are they using all the data? Are they kind of monetizing on the data, my receipt, buying history, and things like this? And we were able to clarify those questions. So we were able to basically ask them point blank, so are you doing this? And we got very direct answers. So I think it was helpful for everybody to who is interested in digital receipts in general, that what is the value proposition, what are the potential risks, and what are they actually doing with the receipt data. So I think it was a good, sobering episode, and really happy to see them still hanging around after all these years in this space. The digital receipt space has been promised, waiting for something to happen for a long time, and it just takes time to tackle a complex problem like this with so many stakeholders with a lot of their own data in the game, so to say.
It's interesting. We discussed about this on the latest Nordic FinTech highlights as well. Everything is going more and more digital, receipts going digital rather than having them in paper, etc. And at the same time, there's an underlying, I won't say recommendation, or maybe there is a slight recommendation to actually go back to non-digital and for everybody to have a little bit of cash available due to geopolitical and global things that are happening. I'm trying to be very selective of the use of my words here right now, but it's do you have some cash hidden under the bed, Ville?
I think I have like a few €100 somewhere. But I haven't used cash in such a long time. But it's funny actually. I mean, you just hit on another theme that was a very much recurring theme in our this season, especially, which is the offline payments. It's partly due to the fact that the central banks here in the Nordics have been very active in talking about those topics. So we lifted them up a few times in the Nordic FinTech Highlights episodes. I'm also working, full disclosure, with the ECB on the digital euro as well. So we are talking about offline payments quite a lot. So it's quite close to my work and my heart. And yeah, it's another one of these very, very topical things that seems to be surfacing a lot right now, especially in the current geopolitical environment. Let's put it that way.
It's interesting in this sort of shift back towards potentially having a little bit of cash. I stopped carrying a physical wallet a very, very long time ago. So having some cash, where am I supposed to put it? It's sort of counterproductive. Do I have to dig out my wallet and find that again and put some cash in it? And then I end up with this bulky thing in my pockets again. I'm not sure I'm ready to go back to wallets and cash, if I'm very honest with you. But yeah, maybe a couple of €100 should be in a sock drawer somewhere.
Yeah, indeed. And it's true actually. So, for example, I don't carry a wallet anymore. I mean, even my car keys are in my phone right now, which of course is a little bit scary because if something happens to the phone, you run out of battery or whatever, then you're going to be in a bit of a pickle because you have nothing working after that. And then the only thing that I carry in addition to my mobile phone now is the keys to my apartment. Now it's just a matter of time before that gets replaced with a phone application as well. So then we're going to be truly centralized in terms of the vulnerabilities in our daily lives if you do lose the phone.
I actually got hit by that yesterday. As you know, they are resurfacing and renovating the road outside of my house, which is a one-way dead-end street. And they have got to a point where they've actually blocked our driveway. So there's no simple way for me to get out of my property with my car. On top of that, they managed yesterday to dig through our power line. So my house and then a couple of the neighbors lost power completely yesterday. So I'm sitting at home. I'm actually blocked at home. I have no power, which means that my Wi-Fi router has gone down. My Mac Mini obviously didn't work because it needs to be plugged into the wall and get electricity. I had minimum amount of battery on my iPad, a minimum amount of battery on my phone. So I could use my iPad for a short period of time and use the 5G on my phone. But that all started dying as well, and I had no way of charging it. So suddenly I realized how dependent I was on my devices. And particularly as I couldn't just jump into a car and drive to an office to get electricity, I was stuck. Yes, I could walk down and try and find a neighbor, but knocking on a neighbor's door 2 streets down and say, I'm stuck, can I charge my phone? Didn't seem appropriate either. So it's interesting as we're moving to digital, completely digital, how dependent we are.
Yeah, and a colleague of mine had another example about your car keys are in your phone right now, so you don't take your car keys with you anymore. So he went to change his winter tires to summer tires, as you do, took the car to the shop, and then left the car there, and then the guy on the other side of the counter said, well, can I have your keys? Well, it's in my phone. I can't give you my phone. And then the only option that he had to go drive back home, get the spare key, and then drive back to the service point in order to get this done. So again, it's not perfect, but
we're getting there.
Yeah,
we're getting there.
Yeah. So maybe just to kind of round off as well, I had the same intent here. Is so what do you think? Did we miss any big trends this season? We already talked about the things we talked about, but do you think we missed something big?
I don't actually think we did. I think in between the guests that we had and the Nordic FinTech highlights, I think we covered off all of the major trends for the first half of this year, at least. I was actually going to ask you about trends for the second half of the year, so we'll get into that afterwards.
Yeah.
Do I think we missed anything? No, I think there's a number of trends we've seen accelerating this first half. Embedded finance is starting to kick off, particularly here in the Nordics. I think that we are starting to see a slowdown of new regulations. So no, I don't think we missed anything. Do you think we missed anything?
Yeah,
except for we haven't spoken a lot about crypto and digital euro, but
yeah. So digital euro we have talked about so much. I don't think we need to talk about that before something new pops up really from that place. But the one thing that we did not talk about, and maybe that's related to, let's say, our little bit skeptical stance towards crypto, is stablecoins. So if you look at the agendas of many of the fintech conferences, including the the one we went to in Stockholm, there's a lot of talk about stablecoins, which seems to be like suddenly everybody wants to talk about it. Everybody is very positive towards it, which is a complete 180 from what happened maybe just 1 year ago. If you go to fintech conferences, there was no talk about stablecoins. Nobody wanted to touch the topic. The reason, of course, why this has changed is because the regulatory stance in the US specifically has changed completely. So now stablecoins are all the rage everywhere. So we've seen announcements from like Stripes and other big payment service providers suddenly supporting stablecoins. And we didn't really cover that in this season. And this is maybe something that we can take away for next season. Maybe we do need to have an episode about stablecoins, and maybe I need to have a fight with somebody on the podcast about whether they make sense or not. But yeah, I think that's something that we should earmark as a thing to cover for next season.
I actually trying to recollect the only real episode we've ever had truly on stable coins and crypto was back in season 1 with Arise in Denmark. I think that's the last time we had, and that turned into a heated debate as well, did it not? So
yeah. I mean, who was the name of the guy? But anyway, he wanted to come back for another round of discussion as well, which is another heated episode. But he came in hot for that.
He did. He came in very hot. Yes, it was. But the listeners like that. When it gets a little bit heated and passionate, then it's worth listening to. So a few more episodes like that, I think we need at some point in time. So
for sure.
But what do you think, Ville, as we're closing off this episode? We're going to go away now, have a relaxing time for summer. What do you think is going to be some of the potentially major trends we're going to see in the second half of this year?
I think we're going to see... coming back to the exact same we just talked about, I think we're going to have this CBDC versus stablecoins versus the instant payment and mobile payment schemes in Europe. I think that discussion, that kind of triangle is going to start to resolve itself, and we're going to have a lot of things more moving around in that space. So not necessarily from a regulatory standpoint, because again, the regulation surrounding this seems to be fairly set now. The only thing that I can predict perhaps is that the stablecoin space will start to complain that they have too many restrictions on them compared to the US regulation, which is just nonsense in my opinion, for the record. But I think there's going to be a lot of discussion about the imbalance of regulation around the world about stablecoins and how to treat them. That's the reason we're going to have a lot of fun discussions on that. The kind of interesting third part in that equation is that they are really they're trying to solve the same problem, the instant payments that we have inside Europe already working with the stack that we have. And then we have CBDCs, namely the digital euro, coming from the kind of retail payment and acceptance angle to that same question. And then stablecoins being kind of this private sector, centralized issuer settlement mechanism that is trying to portray itself as the solution to everything. And I think these are going to clash in the middle, and it's going to be a fun show to watch.
It definitely is. I think from my perspective, the first thing I'm going to say is I have learned over the last 20 years that I sometimes expect a faster acceleration of trends and disruption than reality. So I think we're not going to see any major changes during the second half of this year. But if I'm going to look at what I believe is going to become very much a focus as we step into the second half of this year, I think it's going to be connected, unfortunately, and I hope I'm wrong here, it's going to be connected to continued upheaval of the geopolitical situation. I think we're seeing a storm brewing. I don't know how this is going to end up. I think it's going to impact the financial industry and the banks, and I think that they are going to start getting concerned about the impact of this, both to their balance sheets, but also to their risk appetite. On top of that, I think that we are seeing a accelerated growth in the area of cybersecurity, deep fakes, and those sort of things. And I think that's just going to accelerate as it is connected to the geopolitical situation. I have a fear that we're going to see the growth of fake news, deep fakes and everything else being used as a political weapon in this continued growth of unrest. And I think that's going to have a focus on the banks. It's going to have a focus from the regulators, from the financial conduct authorities, particularly as we start looking at how individuals, consumers deal with the unrest, and then therefore particularly on their money, their livelihoods, and everything else. That's my prediction for the second half of this year.
Yeah. Another thing I think we predicted this last year as well, is that we have reached like the peak Gen AI hype, and that it would start to maybe become more realistic. Well, I think one of those things happened. We definitely reached the peak of Gen AI last year, and we're still there. So it hasn't started to recede. But also, to be honest, and might be controversial to some of your listeners, is that the Gen AI technology itself has not progressed anywhere really in the past year. So it's stagnating. The development is stagnating, even though of course you read about all these fantastical things that the big AI companies are announcing, but none of it actually makes a difference in any kind of meaningful way, other than of course that they're a little bit smoother talkers now, these chatbots, and you are able to generate images now. But in terms of actually having a practical use case that you can really use to have an impactful economic impact on the economy has not happened. And I think this will gradually, slower than I predicted for sure, start to mean that the AI hype will start to recede. But looking forward to being proven wrong on this point as well.
We saw something to a certain degree a little bit similar to this with the blockchain, right?
True.
There was a lot of hype of blockchain is going to change everything, and the banks are doomed and everything else. And then that hype curve sort of slowed off. We're sort of seeing something similar with the AI.
Yeah, true.
Gen AI stuff.
The blockchain hype is back, by the way, so we go in circles. Everything hype cycle is not real. It's a circle. So.
Exactly. But as always, we are rapidly running out of time. We're getting to the end. Ville needs to pack and jump on an aeroplane to see the world. So we're going to round off this season and this episode and shut everything down and relax almost completely. We still need to edit this episode with Femi, and we need to get it published and everything else. But so with that, Ville, any final words to our listeners?
Do we need to do a joke?
Oh, that's a very good point. And I suppose I'm hosting this, so it's down to you. What's your joke?
Yeah, I mean, really scraping at the bottom of the barrel. The bottom of the barrel is gone already. We're underground already with this joke. So I do have a joke, unfortunately, but it is what it is.
Go for it.
Okay. So why don't fintech founders take some vacation?
Oh, very, very on point. I have no idea.
Because even at the beach, they're still trying to disrupt the sandbanks.
You mean where the fish keep their money?
Yeah, exactly. No, riverbanks or sandbanks. There's plenty of banks around to disrupt, right?
Exactly. Oh, God. Okay, and with that, Ville, if people want to get in contact with you and continue the chat about Sandbanks and fintechs, how can they reach you?
You can reach me on LinkedIn. That's my exclusive platform right now, but looking forward to chatting with you there. Fantastic.
And the same for me. You can reach me on LinkedIn. You can also reach the podcast Fintech Daydreaming on LinkedIn or on YouTube or on our website or on any other general podcasting platform. Please hit the subscribe button, hit the share button, hit the like button. Leave us a comment. Tell us whether you enjoyed this season or not and what you would like to hear about in the next season. We always like those comments and feedbacks. We tend to get them more in email format for some strange reason through our website than directly as comments. But either way, reach out to us, and we will gladly align with what you want to hear going forwards. And as I always say, please, if you do just one thing and you've enjoyed this episode and you're still listening to us, share this with one of your friends. Get us one more subscriber. We like it as we grow. This episode has been hosted by myself, Pål Krogdahl, and Ville and Pål. It's been edited and produced by Femi. We will be back after the summer vacation as we take a little bit of a relax and a breather to entertain you yet again with some more fintech goodness. But until then, this has been Fintech Daydreaming.
This is Fintech Daydreaming.